Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast where we cover media, politics, deception, propaganda,
Skullduggery,
hanging out, having a cool time,
Rumspringa.
getting conned. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Jason.
I'm Aiden again.
I'm Jason again.
I'm Alex again, but it's Aiden's turn, so we should let him do a third one.
And I'm hosting Aiden in for the Aiden Triumvirate. Well, I was kind of waffling over how to start this episode because there's some more fun stuff, there's some lighter stuff, but there's not really any like super happy, quirky animal stories to go with. So
yeah, some pretty heinous shit happened over this past weekend. We just we're recording this after Easter and Passover weekend, in which something like 10 mass shootings happened. But who knows when you'll hear this?
And only 300 of them were in Ukraine.
All right,
American mass shooting.
Wait, cut that? I thought that was good.
I was joking.
I don't get it.
I was joking that there's a fucking war on in which there's mass casualties every second.
Yeah, but you don't call wars mass shootings.
All right, whatever.
It's not a war. Isn't a series of large school shootings. It's
We're like 1 year away from the press doing that. Like
mass casualties.
We call it mass shootings when it's Russia.
Lethal exchanges. So let's start with one though that's the easiest to make fun of, which is of course our eternal wellspring of I don't want to be charged with libel, so I won't be too insulting. Interesting takes. Tommy Friedman.
Tommy boy.
He likes it.
Tommy boy.
We got two here in a similar vein. You could even say almost saying exactly the same thing, hammering the same point in over and over again. He asks the poignant question first. And if you're not familiar, audience, I'm talking about Thomas Friedman, a prodigious prodigy of editorial optimization.
Prodigious prodigy. That is something he would say.
Child genius.
In his mind palace where he's debating FDR or something. And Caesar.
How do we deal with a superpower led by a war criminal? Thomas Friedman wondered.
I don't know. Ask like the Bush administration.
You played yourself. Another one. Like, what do you mean? That's our existence.
No, Putin is the first war criminal to gain power.
See, now this would be interesting. What if he's asking like an existential question, like, have we been the hegemon all along? Like, what is it? What does it mean to be the empire? Like, he's some like, fart huffing loser in the imperial. He's like, what does it mean to be, to have a Darth on your side? Like, I don't know. Maybe he's being blinded by the light.
But I mean, the framing of the question applies that this is the first time this has happened, not only domestically but also internationally. It's like, was Stalin easier to manage than this? Like, was Mao Zedong easier to handle than this? Like,
they weren't superpowers.
There are people who are universally despised by the American right and center who would have been considered war criminals leading superpowers. It's just, like, the framing of this is nonsensical even by their own conservative reasoning. So I don't even know what the fuck he's saying. Like, did we forget how to deal with superpowers led by war criminals?
Maybe he's just saying, not that it's novel or new, but just like in the 21st century, it's logistically different. Or maybe he's like, saying, early Soviet Union and China didn't live up to what he considers a superpower. That, communist China and early Soviet Russia never achieved the point of actual regional hegemon, which is, not true, but who knows? We're just speculating on his obviously absurd statement. So,
I mean, do you think that he's really trying to say, like, I just have my take on it? So he's like, here's how we deal with a superpower. Like, he's just giving advice rather than asking like an impossible.
If I know Thomas Friedman, he doesn't have any answers. He's just question after question of inane bullshit because he's trying to make it sound like he's smart. And one of the, like, how to pretend you're smart 101 is to phrase everything as a question. Like you're being, thought-provoking and you're making people, flex their intellectual muscles.
Or is it?
Correct. Boom. Got him. But Yeah, correct. Exactly. So my guess is that it's just paragraph after paragraph that end with questions, say NATO a bunch like Bill Clinton, and just are totally devoid of anything.
So to
totally
return
empty bowels.
To return to the original joke that has already been made, I mean, you don't, right? Because when we had the exact same thing happen during Vietnam or during Korea or during Iraq, either time when the United States was being the war criminal and basically was the world's biggest superpower, you don't do anything. Nothing, no one can stop you. They just kind of wait till you burn yourself out. You tucker yourself out doing genocide, and then they kind of watch as you're like struggle to haul your ass back to neutral of your own accord because you realize it was a terrible mistake. I mean, it's not a good solution, but it seems to be what the world has settled on, which is just kind of let it run its course and hope that it ends sooner than later. And as despairing and cynical as that may sound, like I'm literally just describing history. Like, what did the rest of the world do when the U.S. was doing belligerent evil shit? That's what they did.
Yeah, and it's it also kind of gives like highlights this idea, and it is important to try to define war crimes, to try to minimize, as long as war is inevitable, to try to minimize the amount of needlessly cruel outcomes and treatment of civilians, etc., who haven't volunteered or been conscripted into conflict. But also, it's just like it's so apparent that people like Thomas Friedman, who are so far away from any reality of having to face anything like real war in their lifetime, have this like mythological idea of like the gentleman's war.
A platonic ideal, one might say.
Yeah, war is clean and honorable, and it's like a a Civ simulation essentially.
What is the true Aristotelian middle position on war? Thomas Friedman asks. But I don't know. He's certainly not like that MSNBC correspondent who's like, "Fuck it, I'm going to Kiev." But
to fight?
Yeah. He did an interview with like Joy Reid or whatever, and he's there in a full military uniform. He's got an AK on his chest. It was really funny. But I don't know, man. Like, yeah, war bad. Thomas Friedman has no way to deal with it. His worldview has no way to reconcile how do you ever do a just war? What does it mean a just war? How does a superpower with nukes get involved in a just war? But like, I don't know. Certainly, there's lots of war crimes going on in Ukraine right now, perpetrated by the Russians. That's without dispute. That's the evidence is insane that's
and I'm
happened.
Sure we'll find even more when they leave.
Right. And it's not whataboutism to say, basically every single superpower that's ever existed does this shit just on their own fiat. But to Alex's point about how you handle this, basically the number one tried and true way to end this shit is internal pressure. Like the biggest contributors to Vietnam and like ending sooner than the Warhawks wanted to go was internal pressure in America. So I think the number one thing that could lead this conflict to end sooner or later is internal.
Yeah, certainly some sort of internal coup would do it, or some sort of popular uprising.
Coup. I'm saying protests. I'm saying actual arguments against the war. I mean, certainly coups happen, but coups usually result in further worse violence. So
yeah, I just don't think that most Russian generals are stupid enough to overcommit to this like Putin is. Like, I don't think Putin's a dumb guy. He's almost certainly not. But for whatever reason, he seems to think he's getting more out of this than he is. So I just don't see him backing down soon.
Whenever we talk about Putin's intelligence, my brain just always goes to Netanyahu because that's who I feel is a very similar figure.
Yeah.
But what scuttled Netanyahu? His violence didn't go well enough, and he had internal pressure from the Knesset and people like other coalitions coming together to push him out. So even though it's complicated of like why he got pushed out, but the point is he wasn't seen as doing a good enough job, and he lost his political power.
Well, the biggest problem is he wasn't quite as authoritarian as Putin, so he didn't turn off democracy completely.
Yeah.
Whereas Putin is just like, no, I'm just going to do the illusion of democracy. There's no real democracy anymore.
Right.
So if the Russian people want to get rid of him, they would have to do a popular uprising, or they'd have to do an internal coup.
And our system, we don't even have to turn off democracy. It was basically never on.
Whereas Netanyahu's whole legitimacy came from the supposed democratic nature of Israel compared to the Palestinians, which was, of course, a false comparison because they never let them even have a state.
Right.
But he had to leave the democracy in place for part of his internal legitimacy, whereas Putin clearly did not in a state where that was not as important to his perceived legitimacy. The only thing that was really important was being a military hero, which is why he's even entering in this kind of bullshit in the first place.
Yeah.
But before we get too heavily just on that, like, if the question is really how do you deal with a nuclear armed state, right? Well, I mean, you can't. Like, you have to deal you have to use whatever degree of like limited power options you have that do not provoke a nuclear conflict.
Or diplomacy.
And if that sounds like it's too limited, it's like, well, they have to do the same thing, right? Because they're not going to start a nuclear war with the United States either, unless they are forced into it by some horrific circumstance. So everyone's dancing around because the handful of extremely powerful nuclear armed states don't want to accidentally destroy the entire world when they beef. So we had many, low level conflicts with the Soviet Union and China over the years, which were both seen as ideological enemies by our state, and they were both nuclear armed, and we managed to not destroy the world. And it's not because we didn't have any conflicts. It's just we tread delicately as to how to handle them. And we had a million proxy wars, and we sent arms and resources and did covert ops and all that James Bond shit mostly accurately. And it eventually economics and internal dissent was what toppled the Soviet Union. So I don't know what has changed since then, other than we've gotten even dumber with the way we expend our resources and lose internal legitimacy than the Soviets used to.
And I doubt Friedman has an answer, so I feel we can move on from his driveling.
Well, we can't quite, because I did say we have 2 headlines.
Oh,
this one neatly rolls into our conversation, and we've basically kind of talked over it, except that it clearly brings China into the mix. As he says,
where's Jia? Where's China?
China and Russia are giving authoritarianism a bad name.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Wait, who wrote this?
Same guy.
What?
Awesome.
Wait, are you kidding?
No. This was the first one was, I think, his most recent op-ed, and this was his previous one.
Bro, what?
Listen, we all know authoritarianism was pretty good.
What is he, Churchill?
So I read just like the first paragraph and just his basic. I mean, who knows where he could veer? That could be like a false flag, a red herring of some sort.
It does sound like a tanky.
It would require a degree of humor, I think, to make this title, and I don't know that he has it.
He basically says, of course, Russia failed war, where Ukraine isn't going as it should, and China's part is overreaching on their zero policy. Their zero tolerance policy for COVID. And so both their internal resistance in China, their failure to contain COVID by not, I guess.
Wait, China being bad authoritarianism is they mishandled COVID?
Uh-huh.
But what was the good authoritarianism that he's talking about?
I think his thing is like, they were like, they're supposed to be like our competitors, our authoritarian competitors. But look, the cracks are showing. Being an authoritarian superpower doesn't work because authoritarianism doesn't really
But we have botched COVID and wars much worse than either of these places.
I still don't even understand the premise. Is he saying we're authoritarian too, and that's why they're our rivals, or we're not authoritarian, and now our libertarian premise is working and theirs isn't, as evidenced by COVID?
I think he is trying his hand at some slight dry humor in the title. Yes.
Press X to doubt.
Or like press Y to say the humor fails. Like I don't know which it is. So I mean, I should go without saying that none of us are authoritarians or even close to that position. So I don't quite understand. I don't even understand like who he's making fun of here. I don't think it's very hard to gin up anti-Russian or anti-Chinese sentiment right now. So it doesn't really have to work this hard to say like China bad or Russia bad. Like you could just put a headline that says that and you get like free points.
Get a fellowship somewhere.
What I find most baffling about all this is that he's analogizing the COVID restrictions with the invasion of a sovereign nation and war crimes. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like, when you go from 1 to 10 on that scale in a single sentence without much creating definitions or any sort of logic, and you're just lumping those into authoritarianism, he's really cheapening the meaning there.
Yeah, but to him, Alex, is just, well, what's their domestic policy? What's their foreign policy? This is what governments do. They mishandle pandemics and start wars, huh? What's the big deal? But this is a point actually I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I just haven't really thought of a good way to cover it. But Aiden has given me a good, landing point here, which is it's been really funny watching all the anger at how Biden's handling the pandemic, even though Trump botched it just as bad, and no one says mum. But then everyone's really mad at how the Tories in England have handled the pandemic. And they both basically done the same thing, which is try to listen to the science sometimes and then be overly controlling because they want to keep the money flowing. And people are in America, everyone's like, it's the liberals' fault. And in England, it's like, it's all the Tories' fault for COVID going bad. So it's like, they think these are somehow opposite worldviews. Two, just like whoever's in power gets blamed whenever things go bad. And three, there's like, it's even past policy. It's just like whoever's in charge, I don't even care what the policies are. Things bad, it's their fault. And so there's this weird, like, levels of political analysis going on where people just are mad at the loser in charge, regardless of the policies passed, regardless of the freedoms violated, regardless of the science. It's just they're in charge and the bad things happening. Fuck you.
Which, to be fair, we do here too with like the whole throw the bums out energy every fucking electoral cycle.
What I'm saying is, it's just interesting watching what are presented to us as the political alternatives to each other, both failing in their kind of authoritarian capacity to clamp down on this pandemic.
Yeah.
And then getting like, well, in England, the right wing is criticized, and in America, the left wing is criticized for identical circumstances. It's bizarre.
Well, the paper, they could have written a headline that's like, China's authoritarianism and American liberalism both shown to have bad names because they couldn't handle COVID. It's like, well, wait, what? Like, because both of us fucked it up. I mean, arguably, China fucked it up less than we did, even though they still fucked it up in the initial phase. So I don't, like, even just on the question of COVID alone, I don't think you can even make a case that we're doing any better than China is.
Even more than that, you would say, like, the last 2 years, and especially the last few months, have shown that international politics has failed.
Right,
like,
exactly.
What that Jamie Dimon bitch was saying, like, internationalism or globalism has failed.
The global rules-based order is just not prepared to handle an international pandemic, apparently.
Right.
So,
international conflict.
I think that's a lot more significant than saying a fucking tin pot dictatorship somewhere isn't behaving. Like, we have failed as a Western civilization, capitalist, democratic world to get our shit together and solve this international crisis in a way that we easily could have if we just made some other decisions. So I feel like that's a much greater indictment of what supposedly was the entire end of history, like, world order, than it is of whether or not a comparatively impoverished and riddled with a million other problems nation state / empire of China is whether they're authoritarian or not, when we already knew they were authoritarian. I just don't, like, this is just one of those articles. It's like, did you know China's communist? It's one of those again. Like, again, like, just if you want to shit on Russia for doing Ukraine, like, okay, shit on Russia for doing Ukraine. Like, this is a perfect time to do that. What the fuck is, like, China's not even in that ballpark right now. I'm sorry.
Have you seen the really cute Boston Dynamic dogs that are running around the streets shouting, "Stay in your houses"? Let me find that video. It's really funny.
Yeah, I'm sure that's horrifying too.
Friedman seems to have landed upon a very weird idea here. Scanning through it a bit, like, he seems to have, this is what they normally do. They like think of something that they believe is novel or interesting or valuable, and they write a whole op-ed about it. And his main premise, like, of course, gets pretty messy and mixed and confused, but is that authoritarian regimes are bad at aggregating and processing information because they're so stringent and so strict. Like, they're much more prone to blind spots, and that
compared to what?
Compared to democracies, which, as flawed as they are, at least we can vote out our incompetent politicians.
But as we first mentioned, we shit the bed on the pandemic much harder than China.
Yeah, I mean, like,
authoritarianism has a strength here in that its stranglehold over the population leads to more control when needed. I mean, so they were able to actually shut themselves down for significant periods of time. And in America, we're like, no, we have to protest this. We have to go be turned into zombies and lick the doors and protest masks and, like, be giant assholes because we say we have democracy. Yeah. And have way more dead per capita.
At the outset, it's pretty obvious, like, that his logic is flawed, because he says that China has obviously failed in their containment efforts because with the Omicron surge, 44 cities are currently on some level of lockdown. We've just chosen to stop locking.
Right, that's not an indictment of the science or authoritarianism. That's an indictment of our freedom-loving, like, leading us to end lockdowns, which leads to the spread of the disease more.
So, in other words, taking precautions against the disease is a sign of failure.
And a sign of authoritarianism to him.
Seems to be what he's trying to spin, yes.
That's a rational metric.
Jesus Christ, what a fucking doofus.
Wait, so is he like one of these guys who's like, we should end all anti-COVID measures in the US too? so that we can say we've won.
But he's almost certainly like a back to school guy, you know?
Yeah, because that sounds like the people who are like, you can't let the pandemic win, you have to die.
Yeah.
I mean, he spent his life trying to...
Pandemic and terrorists are identical. They're specters of evil trying to destroy democracy.
He spent his life doing what?
Trying to like cosplay as a participant in wars. So I think, he probably is trying to frame this as a war as well. COVID has designs upon America.
I mean, his entire foundational premise that you just asserted, which is like bureaucracy, efficient bureaucracies are only associated with democracies, I think is laughable. Even if we all oppose authoritarianism, I don't think it's difficult to point to authoritarian states that had efficient bureaucracies and functional executive command structures. If anything, it's easier to do when you don't have to delay to get the consent of the governed.
There's been plenty of authoritarian governments that have the trains run on time.
But I think what he's confusing is the idea of whether they do the thing that they should be doing because they don't have the check and balance of consent of the governed versus whether it's efficient. Authoritarian states tend to be more efficient, but they don't always do the right thing because they're authoritarian.
Right, they have no check and they have no consent.
They have both worse and better outcomes on a much greater gradient than democracies, which tend to have inefficient, but at least generally in the public wheel outcomes. I say generally because we clearly don't. But, most of the European countries took at least some rational measures against COVID. Many of the third world countries did the same because they had democratic functions. And it's like, it's not the most efficient, but it's at least trying to do a public good. And I think authoritarian states that for some reason stumble upon doing the public good can do it even more efficiently. It's just that's not a guarantee. So I feel like he's kind of crossing the wires in his brain of even trying to understand how these systems operate and what they mean.
He is genuinely making the Platonic enlightened dictator argument. Like, this is what I mean. He is genuinely a Churchillian. If we just had good authoritarians, we'd get a lot of good done.
I thought he was making the opposite, which is that he was trying to confuse the idea of whether authoritarianism or democracy are more efficient at bureaucracies, and somehow democracies are more efficient at bureaucracies. I don't even.
There's no way he could be arguing that because of the way we've handled the pandemic. But also, you don't say a thing that's totally always evil is getting a bad rap from these things. Things that are redeeming in some degree can get a bad rap from people who are making them look bad. If authoritarianism always looks bad, then saying Russia and China are making them look bad doesn't mean anything.
This is why Friedman's a genius, because he writes things that are such gibberish that you almost have to deep dive them to make sense of them because they make no sense. Because this headline alone would just be either total farce or totally evil. So even in our mini deep dive we've just done, it still makes no sense. I don't know.
There are truly infinite depths to this man.
It's a very upsetting gentleman.
I think the point he's trying to make is a very confused one. I think you're right, Alex, that he is confusing two concepts and ideas, but I think what he wants to say is like authoritarians, especially quote unquote strongmen like Putin, only allow you to tell them what they want to hear. And then also countries like China censor social media, and those two things equal not being aware of world events in the same way that democracies are.
That's stupid, but at least something. At least that's a coherent argument.
I'm starting to genuinely believe the censor social media thing. Social media is so evil.
I believe censor NYT op-eds at the very least. Right there.
Yeah,
seems like a safe place to test that.
Like social media is going to be why the nukes go off one day.
I mean, they very frequently violate basic premises of hate speech and inciting violence, so I'm not opposed to that. What else you got? Friedman's putting me in a funk.
A Friedman funk, patent pending.
Yeah, and I'm not the good kind like you like to dance to.
Buy our new Friedman funk merch.
All right. Well, we'll do some we'll install democracy into this previously authoritarian podcast.
Yeah, let's get the efficiency going.
We got to download democracy.
Do you want
to download a Russian bear?
Do you want number 2 of the Atlantic newsletter headline guessing game? Do you want
put it in my veins
propaganda talk, or do you want a rare good headline?
If you don't have an animal or like fun ending, we should end with that quiz again because I thought that was a fun outro. Yeah.
Propaganda.
Okay.
Good name.
What was the Dunkin' Donut, Dunkachino. Like that's what it makes me feel.
That's a forever classic. Evergreen. Yeah. Probably Al Pacino's best role, although I still haven't watched Serpico yet. So maybe that will change.
Come and try my chocolate blend.
Hoa.
Big asses.
Deep cups.
All right, let's
Deep cups. All right, let's hit us with it.
Let's start with a, it's going to be bad because it's from the New York Post. NYPD van fatally strikes homeless man in Brooklyn. And then cops.
It's like they put the tag. It's like this should go in the cop section of our paper.
Cops seeking rogue van.
Yeah, I was going to say, are they going to arrest the van?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're trying to say is cops on the case.
Van was 2 days for being retired.
Van drives to the subway and starts a shooting.
I mean,
maybe this is a new show, NYPD Van.
Stories like this, right? Where we walk out to unlock our car and we find that it has autonomously killed a homeless man while we looked away.
It's just iRobot.
I mean, part of me admires the word salad that cops are able to gin up to disguise their crimes. But this one seems lazy. Like this one doesn't really disguise it very well. It's like you need like one word to make it obvious what happened. I don't know.
Yeah. It's. I mean, you say that, but then there's the Daily Beast's version of the headline, which it isn't that different. I will say, but it does elucidate a bit. NYPD hits and kills homeless man while trying to beat a red light.
Oh, that's way worse.
That actually makes me feel better about it. I thought they were intentionally running him over.
I love that.
Yeah, but that's what I would expect. So the fact that they're trying to, that what actually happens, they're just trying to beat New York traffic is more tragic to me.
Yeah, now it's just like The Boys or fucking Assy McGee. Like it's just like a farcically ridiculous form of murder. Or manslaughter, I guess.
And then they say, cop union responds, it was still a yellow light. Like, what possibly could the response be?
Right of way goes to the cop van. I don't know.
Right, it's cops, then pedestrians, then cars. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Should have been at home. Oh, wait.
I like that while being this much more specific, they still didn't just say the police did it. I guess NYPD hits is different than NYPD van hits.
But the NYPD didn't hit them as like an entity. A cop driving a car did this.
80,000 cops as a collective union killed this homeless man.
They cannot say this individual is responsible for this act. Why is that so fucking hard to have individual cops take responsibility for their good or their bad?
Look, the NYPD has a long record of criminal infractions that we need to dig out and put into the public eye. When we determine whether they are guilty of this infraction as a collective entity. Like if we treated the NYPD like they treat any fucking suspect in any other crime, it would be a nonstop barrage of crimes.
But like this is kind of my point. That even when they are saying who to blame, there's still solidarity. When MS-13, shoots some dude, they're like gangbanger, 13-year-old cholo, thug, evil child. They don't say like this large organization responsible for the violence. It's always individualizing and atomizing. But whenever it's people that we ought to think well of, it's like, well, it's an institution. We can't get rid of them. We can't change them.
MS-13's Hummer strikes and kills homeless man.
Right? Could you imagine, Latin King's blinged out Escalade? Like, no. What are you talking about? You put the blame on the people who did the act, not their objects or their organizational capacity.
I would also put some of the blame on Adams for starting a police war against the homeless, even more than it already existed. Like, this is coming in the midst of this overall push to basically drive through, bulldoze, shove out all homeless people from New York City.
Right.
And the police are basically given carte blanche to treat the homeless like they don't exist, or worse.
The Jacobin equivalent would be like, in Adams, New York, with rising police presence, NYPD run over homeless guy with a van.
Yeah. I mean, when the head of your city, who is also a former cop, is saying, like, we need to round up the homeless and treat them like vermin, I mean, I think your attitude of whether you're going to take precautions around them kind of shifts. Just my 2 cents. Knowing that you'll probably get away with hitting one with a van and have no real consequences for it is probably part of that push. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you can. I mean, as much as I'm almost always willing to blame the police when they do crimes, this one strikes me as also a political failure of just not even treating homeless people like people or acting like it matters when you kill them.
I immediately regret my vote for propaganda.
Well, don't worry, buddy. There's only 2 left. Yeah, I mean, I know this is a fairy tale wish, but New York could entirely be a place where homeless people don't exist because they are all housed, not for the nefarious reasons that
There's definitely not enough space in all the buildings in New York.
cop us out.
That can't possibly be a solution.
B&B owners have rights too, rights way above those of homeless people, apparently. Anyways, yeah. So I agree actually though with you, Alex, what you originally said. Not the worst kind of propaganda or cover for a clear police crime that I've seen, but still, even when they're lazy, it's still there.
Oh, you're right. That's what they could have said. If they were really covering for him, they could have said, van with NYPD markings on it hits homeless person, because then they could say it was like a frame job, that someone was like driving an illegal van or impersonating cops and making them look bad.
Well, there is an even worse framing.
Like making authoritarians look bad.
The even worse framing is jaywalking homeless person damages van with body
with history of drug abuse.
Yeah, and make it seem as though they did the crime.
Right. Thwarted insurance fraud, traffic violation.
Fatally dies trying to mooch off of public funding.
Vagrant criminal jaywalking's crime spree ceased by 14,000 pounds of metal.
New York City pizza rat crushed as he deserved.
Like that may sound like 1984 or like RoboCop tier dystopia, but we're not far from it.
Just one great leap for man. So I think everyone, at least who lives in America, has heard about the Brooklyn subway shooting, and I don't want to dwell on it too much. It was a tragedy and a resulting pathetic failure by the way overfunded NYPD to do anything to try to catch him, or if I were to dream, prevent this from ever happening.
Did everyone survive? The last I checked, they had all survived.
Yeah.
I haven't followed the story at all. It was too upsetting.
Last I saw, like what was it? I think like 14 people, 20 people injured.
Yeah, there were a bunch of injured people, but it seemed as though none of them were gonna have life-threatening injuries.
I have not seen a fatality, luckily. The New York Times, I think I did this once before. There's an account that follows changes to New York Times headlines, and so I will post an image of that. I'll read the original and then the altered one.
Doing the Lord's work.
How much later was the alternate updated?
A few hours.
2 hours?
A few hours, I think.
Oh, a few hours. That's
the original is several people shot in Brooklyn subway station. The altered one is shooting in subway station heightens simmering fears about public safety.
So they literally turned it from like a news story to a like crime and punishment fear terrorism story. God damn.
This is the most infuriating shit. I mean, obviously the actual shooting is the biggest issue, but this is part of a huge number of articles that are trying to do like news meta news, or they'll be like, the mass public reacts in the following percentage way based on push polling after an event happens that we highlighted for them. Like, stop it. This is not your job.
I doubt they even have polling in here. It's just the same story.
Know.
They're just lying that the public's upset, or not that the public's upset, but that this is leads to a actual change in what people's perception. Because it's literally the same article, the same as before. The only thing that's changed is the headline. So it's not that the content could have changed to we now have new polling data.
Yeah, it's just stop telling the public what they think. Let the public come to their own conclusions.
Yep, that's really the point. Stop trying to.
If that's not the purpose of news, then what are they doing?
You to contextualize things, not make up the context and then force it down people's throat.
Everyone learns in journalism 101 that the news is designed to tell you what to think about current events.
Mass public is going to vote Republican in 2022 based upon what we tell them. Like, what?
They may as well write that article. Just
stop it. Get some help. Like this is such fucking gibberish. Like if you want to say like, hey, a particular politician or political class has failed us, by all means do that and demonstrate it. But don't just be like, hey, why don't you do the following based upon this article? Like, what the fuck? This is like super liminal.
They should just write an article, which is like a gun pointed at a puppy, and say, "You don't want this? You don't like this? Vote R." Just write it, because that's what they want to say.
What, the Mad TV thing or the Mad Magazine thing? It's like, buy this magazine or we shoot this dog.
Yeah, but even more directly political. Like Democrats want to shoot and eat this dog. Vote R. Like that may as well be their headline.
Like, let's be charitable
Eat, then shoot
for the sake of an intellectual exercise. Like, you can't even really pretend, I think, that this offers any substantive or useful like information in adding this editorializing at the end. Like, shooting in subway station heightens simmering fears about public safety.
In fact, it's less info because they took out Brooklyn. So if you're living in Brooklyn and reading this headline, maybe okay, maybe I should get away from this. There's probably a bunch of police there. There might be people heightenedly, scared, violent, guns out. But now it's like, some random subway, who knows which one. So now if you're reading the second headline, you're living in Brooklyn, you go to the subway, you get fucking arrested, you get beat up, you get, frisked, people are questioning you, you don't know what's going on. Like, they took out useful information.
And they could have at least used, referenced an issue that is meaningful as like a voter issue, like gun control on this. But instead they use a word that's coded to cover everything from the public safety danger of homeless people to drug users, all the kind of marginalized targets of police enforcement. And then heightened simmering fears. Of course it does. Of course people are scared when they get shot in the subway. It's like, it's so gross and unhelpful. And I mean, coming from the New York Times, you have to believe that it's intentional. Like
how about a headline: heightened police presence didn't do dick about stopping a shooting? Where's that one?
I mean, that really is the thing. Is police force with one of the highest budgets of any militarized force in the world, unable to stop stochastic terror in its city.
Right, as many good guys with guns as possible didn't do shit. Didn't stop a single person from getting shot because their job is reactive by definition.
It's offensively wrong. Imagine if the headline, 20 years ago was like, following tragedy of 9/11, Rudy Giuliani sure seems incompetent, doesn't he? Like, and he let that happen. Like, it's like, what the fuck? Like, what are you saying?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, ostensibly, the reason more police are out is to prevent these kinds of things. That's what the reason the people who say we need more cops say it for. So when that is naked, obviously, I know what you're saying. Like, we can't, it's not Giuliani's fault 9/11 happened. There's nothing he could do about it. He didn't have the intel. He's not in charge of national security. He was just happened to be the person in charge when the thing happened. But that's not what the equivalent, because the cops are supposed to be a deterring force. They're supposed to be investigating. They're supposed to be proactively trying to solve crimes and stop crimes. So when there's 10 times as many of them out, getting mad that their Dunkin' Donuts order was wrong and a subway shooting still happens, they're not really doing what they said they're doing.
Well, they're not. First of all, we know, everyone, including them, know they're not doing that in the first place, because that isn't what they actually do.
Yeah.
And secondly, this is a false equivalence between a random mass shooting and the idea of generalized crime, which are completely different things. Right. So they're trying to link a random act of mass violence by someone with no profit motive or drug scoring motive or gang motive or anything like that. It's literally just a crazy person doing a mass shooting, which we have plenty of other instances of in the United States, with the idea of the homeless are dangerous or the drug users are dangerous or poor people in general are dangerous, which are completely different things, both of which are misrepresented in our media. But trying to link those things together is just blatantly irresponsible and incorrect. This guy is not it's not like we're going to get 10 more of this guy because we let the homeless live in the subway or something.
Right.
These have nothing to do with each other.
He wasn't blowing up a drug deal or doing a hit on a certain target in the subway.
He's just insane. You can't draw a 1-to-1 of being like, this has to do with New York City's gang problems or something. That wasn't the nature of the attack. So, like, first of all, having the mass public even have a simmering fear has to do with the media's representation of how dangerous things are, more than any actual reality, which would suggest they are nowhere near as dangerous as we believe them to be. And two, this is linking two things together that have nothing to do with each other. So, like, okay, the article may as well be media continues to pour gasoline on fire of mass terror, enabling far-right psychopaths to further crack down on vulnerable people.
Media continues to use random events of violence to weave a narrative of organized, cohesive, trying to get you in your backyard and your little dog to violence.
Right.
I mean, and it's not even just linking causality. It's insidiously linking and kind of leveling in the field of like mass shootings are the same as feeling uncomfortable because you see homeless people in your neighborhood. Those are the same thing.
That homeless person is doing violence to you by sitting on the sidewalk.
Yeah, the same umbrella. So you should treat them the same, and the result should be not commensurate in any way because they're the same thing. It's really. It just reads to me like an excuse to brutalize people, further. Not that they really need one, but New York Times is happy to provide them with one whenever they can.
And not just to brutalize people immediately, but to set the political groundwork in place for them to brutalize them even further in the near future by pushing back with this massive campaign of disinformation that they've been spreading for years now, that any attempt to reform the police or restrict them in any way has to not only not be done, but actively the opposite needs to be done. Right. Because look at all this crime.
Right. When some new DA runs for office and the people that always go, but what about the subway shooting? Like as if the opposition are pro subway shootings.
Because the implication is we need more cops and more cops with guns and more training and more funding for cops. Because when you're linking crime to mass shootings and pretending that either of those things are solved by cops when neither of those things are solved by cops, what you're basically implying is, hey, elect more Republicans or elect more right-wing Democrats. That's what they're asking you to do. Like, they may not be saying that, but that's what they're saying. So, and there's a million articles that are all saying the exact same thing. They're all basically just they may as well be on the same script at this point because they're so fucking similar.
They're all in the Sinclair same local talking points script.
And then in a few years it'll be like left-wing Adams refuses to execute homeless people on site. So the Republican counter argument is just kill the homeless because homelessness is now a literal crime kind of thing. And then we'll all be trying to desperately keep Adams in power because we're like he's our last hope.
Right, and then Biden's gonna be going around like, this is the most important local election ever, Jack. Gotta keep Mayor Adams McCheese in office.
Yeah.
Well, it's grim.
Speaking of Sinclair-owned local news stations, let's go to KWTX, a local Texas station, for our final propaganda piece. Texas state troopers told to slim down waistline or faced consequences. Report.
I love it when Republicans get on the correct side of the culture war because they don't like getting fat shamed anymore. That's funny.
So I think as a leftist podcast, all of our collective problems with law enforcement can be boiled down to them being overweight, right? It's not what they do with their power. It's how they look when they
it's because they look like thumb pig people.
Yeah, they look like shrimp.
We're just racist.
I actually wish they were fatter. Fatter cops would be less dangerous.
Yeah, but the problem is if they're fatter, but you can't run away, now they are more dangerous, and they become more bulletproof the fatter they are.
Because they're just going to sumo crush you,
right? Yes, like more people will die if Chauvin was fatter. I'd be better at crushing.
That's a sentence for that.
But he clearly didn't need the weight to do the murder.
Yeah, I'm just saying he can murder more people like a day if he's fatter. He can kill them quicker.
He could have moved on from George Floyd and killed another.
Right, he could have killed the woman recording by crushing her in 5 minutes.
Cop uses fat bastard size frame to commit mass murders of people he's arresting.
And as I said, it's also a defensive perk. You become more bulletproof when you're fatter.
All right.
So we can't have that.
Mythbusters has pretty demonstrably shown that saves your life maybe 1 in 100 times.
It's not a cop killing.
At scale, Alex, though. At scale. Think about how many cops there are.
It's a lipid-involved demise.
Right, a lipid-adjacent survival event.
I'm not hoping the cops get fucking killed.
Neither am I. I'm just saying it happens to make you more bulletproof. Although, if they become more bulletproof that way, they can spend less on like tac vests and gear.
Jesus, like we're building a battle bot here.
Yeah. We've got a limited amount of resources. We have to figure out where we want to put our perks: offense, defense, utility, battery life.
The $6 million cop, and most of it's lard, apparently.
And that's really just the money they spent defending him in the lawsuit.
No, because then they have to spend more money to upsize all of their gear.
All right. Well, maybe I've had some of my most insane takes on this story.
Yeah, we're entering a real beautiful mind territory.
It's fine.
So who's on whose side of this argument? Is this Republicans, like politicians versus Republican cops, and they like, because I don't see any side of this that like I agree with or makes sense to me.
I'm envisioning it like it's like America's Next Top Model or something, like Project Runway, where it's like the bitch DA or the bitch prosecutor's like, honey, you need to get in shape if you want to catch more criminals. I don't know. It's funny though.
Because maybe this is being misrepresented, and it was literally just a physician report that's like the number one killer of cops after COVID is like heart disease. So they need to slim down so that they don't die.
Like,
maybe that's all this is.
Yeah.
You're going to die if you don't.
Like, number of cops having like massive heart attacks in their 40s because of their weight is too high. We need to change this. Like, maybe it's as innocuous as that.
Number of cops getting sarcoidosis from COVID or myocarditis, whatever it's called.
Lupus.
Whatever.
It's always lupus. I obviously don't know what the take is. I obviously chose it because it is completely aligning like the issue. The issue isn't that we need a more physically fit law enforcement force, but
we need like that Spanish or Portuguese like fascist hunky cop unit.
I think the other way or like the
homoerotic jacked
cops. IDF soldiers is the other way to read it is like law enforcement has so solidly won the battle, quote unquote, that as much as there ever was a battle for power and confidence, that now they can just focus on like demographic aesthetic stuff.
Just like bullshit.
Oh no, I was thinking they've won so hard they like can afford to become Slavic. That's like literally the pigs from Animal House. Like they can afford to be slobs because their job is actually extremely easy, and
it won so long ago that this is now the snap back to that. Gotcha.
Do you think this might be even dumber, which is like some sort of vague lib like city take that's like isn't the biggest problem with cops that they're fat? Aren't they fat guys?
We test their overtime based on their weight or some insane Democrat bullshit.
Some sort of like MSNBC attack that's like meaningless but amusing because they don't like fat people.
As likely as anything else, and that means quite likely.
Sure, they do all the racism and the murder, but have you seen their waist belts? Oh my god!
Yeah, but what Democrat would be caught engaging in the fat shaming?
Rachel Maddow.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. Like someone like Maddow who would be like, "I don't have a good attack, so let me make a funny one or a ridiculous one."
No, that's something like Bill Maher would say. But Rachel Maddow would be like, "Tonight, I'm going to defend cops, the fat shaming of cops. We shouldn't be doing this to our men in blue." Like she would do some dumb shit like that.
Women in blue.
No rule. If you want to defend the thin blue line, you need to have a thin waist.
Exactly. Right. So that's a Bill Maher joke making fun of fat cops. But Rachel Maddow would be like, think about this. What percentage of women are overweight? What percentage of cops are women? They're talking about women cops here, clearly. Like, she would have some bullshit way of defending them.
Her eyes are rolled back on her head. She's just like conjuring.
Well, yeah, I just mean if she wasn't defending, if she was attacking them, it would be on similarly idiotic grounds. The cops need more women, and until then, they can't be fat because we need to protect only fat women or something. I mean, it would have been the inverse, right? I'm just saying it would have been one of these meaningless takes.
We need a fat lady cop calendar now.
It seems like it's criticizing the police, but it's ultimately total ephemera.
Well, we're on the subject of punditry now. Luckily, this has been a very smooth transition. So let's move from something meaningless and just vaporous like Rachel Maddow, something important from Newsweek. I managed to find a headline that wasn't strangely reactionary for what I thought was not an ostensibly right-wing publication to this. Tucker Carlson's End of Men documentary mocked as homoerotic. Quote unquote, this is so gay.
Wait, who said that though?
I don't know, but that's what made me laugh is that they didn't source it. It felt like it was Newsweek saying it.
Newsweek is calling Tucker Carlson's documentary so gay.
That's what it felt like. That's what it reads like.
Oh God, now I have to watch this thing.
Do we?
I mean, it could be funny.
I'm sure it is, but it's like
it's less than an hour. I'd consider watching.
I watched an animated video of someone like taking direct Tucker Carlson quotes, and like the way his words are impacting the American public is basically turning them all into demons. It's quite good.
I guess I'll the same animation.
This is on the level of like buck breaking. I don't know if I really want to watch this shit. But anyway, I have no idea what this is. It's very funny to me that he did it. I'd much rather he does this than like, hey, let's commit like race violence and
oh no, he's doing this on his side
day.
time, Alex. He's still working at Fox News 24/7. This is just on top.
So he's just made a documentary of the pussification of the American male, basically.
That somehow
sounds about right. Yeah,
made them. It's harking back to Spartan times. It seems.
Well, that definitely had no gay
our
stuff going on.
Judeo-Christian hunky values.
Yeah, exactly. He's embracing the homoeroticism of masculinity. Yeah,
something tells me Tucker Carlson would not have made it through the Agogi system.
He is. Yeah, it's just so funny. He spits out all this stuff. He produces content like this, and he's just like a dork in a bow tie. It's very fun. He was like the heir to a frozen foods empire.
I can't find him funny, actually. In fact, I think he had a moment. I think Jon Stewart had the same moment with Tucker Carlson that Obama did with Trump, where at that dinner, he was like, and you won't be president, bitch. And Trump's like, oh, we'll see. I think Jon Stewart, when he did that crossfire thing with that poor Hillary guy and Tucker Carlson, I think that's what actually radicalized Carlson. He's like, I'll show you. I'll show you that I'm some namby-pamby Republican. I'll become like the biggest demagogue of the right wing ever. So I find a way. I blame Stewart for this.
I don't know. I was making fun of this fucking bow tie dipshit for 20 years too. And I mean, I guess it's as much on anyone who was recognizing that he was a piece of shit then. But I mean, the criticism that was pushed back when like Republicans tried to be civilized and like ate with forks was the idea that like, oh, you can't make fun of someone for their appearance. So it's like, oh, sure, he may be an idiot wearing a bow tie, but you have to listen to his ideas. And it's like now he has a chance to say his ideas. They're all like fascist. It's like, oh, maybe we should have just made fun of him for being a bow tie dipshit and not heard what he had to say.
Yeah, I strongly believe that ad hominem attacks have a
funny.
Yeah, solid place in discourse, healthy discourse. Yeah, I mean, yes, obviously, in reality, it is horrific that this man has this much sway over as many people in America and unfortunately across the world with how much Fox News rhetoric is being exported. But it's also funny that he is a complete loser, visually and personally. So that's my hot take on the subject.
It's bad hombre.
It's always fun when people are like, oh, men have failed existentially in our society, and I'm not talking about myself.
Yeah, it's like
it's the same Alex Jones thing. It's like, I will be the one arbiter. I will be the one man fighting for you, fighting for masculinity, because the rest of you guys have become too soy.
Yeah, it's like when Jordan Peterson talks about this shit, and he's like melting from only drinking apple cider vinegar.
Yeah, from only eating meat for like 6 years.
True Germans are all tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, says short, brown-haired man with not blue eyes. Like,
this is funny. Let's take a moment to think about some of the right-wing like masculine darlings: Ben Shapiro, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, and Jordan Peterson. Some of the like least masculine, most like deformed like gang of villains ever assembled.
The most handy capable group of fiends. Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ. At least, Dan Bilzerian and like the Liver King look like fucking, anime characters. Good God. The people defending masculinity, they, don't protest too much.
A league of handy-capable gripers.
Why did my society make me fat and evil? I don't know, man. Maybe you should look into that.
You seen that before and after pic of Alex Jones, though?
Yeah.
Like, so good after. Definitely not exactly the same.
I've seen this before and after owing like $10 million to a bunch of people he defamed, and that had a bigger effect than that juice.
Be tightening that belt one way or another.
Oh yeah, that also happened this week. He has declared Alex Jones has declared bankruptcy for InfoWars. Not because he's actually bankrupt, but because he's trying to funnel money and hide it from having to pay the Sandy Hook victims.
Yeah.
Unless he somehow weasels his way into like a $100 million government grant or something like that.
Yeah, he gets like new COVID relief bonus money. gets to spin again.
He's constantly spinning and twisting like a fish on a hook that like can't accept that it's been caught. So he's just flailing and flailing and flailing at the edge of the water.
Yep.
They're having a big sale on their bone broth if you want.
Oh, their bone broth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bone broth is good.
Yeah. And he sounds like a liver cleanse thing as well. It's insane. Kidney cleanse or something.
Colon blow.
They're all out of their minds. I need a feed bag. Survive COVID.
I miss Phil Hartman.
I think most of us do.
It's the crime wave's fault he got shot.
Yeah. It led into our atmosphere of moral panic.
That's why Rogan's become right wing. We watched Phil Hartman get cut down by his bitch wife.
Rogan won.
It's a suicide mission.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of martial arts.
Well, we've been ragging on conservatives.
We should do something like that.
On conservatives for a while now with this bit. So let's move on to praising them where we should. From Washington Post, GOP's cozy ties with big business unravel as DeSantis unloads on Disney.
You sure this wasn't the homoerotic article?
DeSantis busts his nut all over Disney's
This is from my
floppy tits. Like, what is he saying? What is this article saying?
DeSantis busts his nut all over Disney. Like, stop it.
But my point is, like, the real story is, we know they stripped Disney's tax exempt status or whatever. And it's like, wait, you're shocked that previously Republicans had ties with big businesses? Yeah, it's not like, you know, the only state that was allowing UFC fights to happen was Florida because they have a cozy relationship, you know, between the government, the governor's house and like Dana White. Yeah, that's called the status quo. That's called governments get bought off by businesses all the time. That's how business works. That's why, you know, all our regulatory capture is captured.
Disney donates to DeSantis' campaign, gets tax carve out, rescinds donation, doesn't get tax carve out.
Pikachu face.
Incredible. They are now against big corporations globally.
Or even like less extreme. It's like just like okay, their overcommitment to a social right-wing policy has now brought them in conflict with fiscal right-wing policy.
Yeah, that was my question. Is do you think like this is a full-on commitment from DeSantis, and probably if this works to his ilk of like, the quote unquote culture war shit is now what we're all about.
Well, I love it actually, because to me it shows the rift that Reagan tried to mend is breaking again, which is the connecting of the social conservatives with the fiscal conservatives is what's basically led to the entire deregulation of the country over the last 30 years. But like that alliance could never fully hold because the social conservatives don't really care about money. Like, they care about chud shit more. They care about stripping people's rights and identity more than they care about making money. So DeSantis is more on board with making Disney look like assholes than getting, you know, money from them, which I think is shocking, but actually good for like switching the balance of power back.
I mean, there's plenty of people who are both, and I think for them there's no contradiction. But in the case of DeSantis, who's not particularly intelligent and who's basically driven his state into the ground at every point of his tenure, I don't think he's clever enough to do like what you were talking about, which is maintain that kind of big evil tent of keeping all the different parts of the Republican Party together. Because the issue is like, okay, does it matter that much that they've revoked, you know, some privileges for Disney? On the one hand, no, it's not really that big a deal. However, it's a signal to other corporations like, oh, he's more wedded to his like anti-LBGT shit than he is to actually playing ball.
LBGT? There's an LBJ joke in there somewhere.
Well, I don't even remember because I have no short-term memory apparently what version of that acronym I said, but it's still all the same people.
Your post acronym.
But the point I was actually trying to make was if corporations think that a state is going to be so obsessed with bullshit like gender rights issues and gay issues, and I don't mean bullshit if you were affirming them, that's actually important. I mean like actively trying to witch hunt gay people. That's not good for their brand, right? Most corporations are kind of aware that that's a toxic thing to do.
Yeah.
So they don't want to do business with someone who's going to damage their brand. So if you are overcommitted to this insane like anti-gay crusade, that he clearly is, yeah, I think that is actually harmful to business interests. I think it's harmful to business interests in the context of a country where most people are revulsed by that attitude. So I think there is an actual wedge being driven here between people who are like, hey, isn't the whole Republican thing supposed to be just like massive handouts to corporations and vice versa? And the people who are going, actually, no, our main thing is to like purge the earth for God.
Yeah.
And to get rid of anyone who doesn't behave exactly the way we want them to.
Once again, this is like Trump is expedited that rift because it's now become more cult of personality than just grift. Obviously, there's still grift involved, but it's like deciding where to put the 5149 or 5248, as our British viewers might appreciate. Like that rift is coming apart. Like we already saw the rift in the Democratic Party, and the establishment beat out the actual leftists. But there are similar rifts of different orientations happening on the right, politically, which is fascinating. And we're going to see that play out, and it's going to lead to some very ugly primaries and runoffs and midterms and shit.
I mean, you want to talk about like superpowers and war criminals. Like what DeSantis is doing to Florida is like a crime against humanity. So I'm not really thrilled to see it, only because I think people have to suffer through the consequences of it. But I do agree that it results in pretty serious like self-harm to the Republican brand.
That's what I mean. I'm not. No, obviously there's always victims who suffer who didn't deserve to suffer, but that's true regardless. Whenever conservatives are in charge, the question is: are they rending their own power in twain by breaking off into different fiefdoms of culture war drudgery?
I mean, my suspicion is they're basically just driving Disney into an actually vaguely like liberal camp position, which is pretty ironic considering who founded it.
Right, you'd think DeSantis' appeal should be like, Disney, you should know better. Your founder was a Nazi. Why are you not on my side?
He wasn't so much a Nazi as merely sympathetic to Nazis.
He would have been if he could have. He wasn't busy
in
monopolizing the car market. You can't slander fucking Henry Ford.
No, Henry Ford was a Nazi, but that's a different thing.
Don't you dare.
That's what I mean. Oh, never mind. Oh, Disney.
We're talking about Walt Disney.
I mean, I got my fascist confused.
I mean, they're contemporaries, you know.
Whatever, close enough. Monopolizing the fucking cartoon market.
I'm sure Disney also had some kind of gift from Hitler on his desk.
I don't care about who fucked who. Who's a Nazi, who's not.
But yeah, I do think that there is something here. I don't think it's like on its own the biggest deal, but it's part of a trend that we've seen in many instances where the GOP is having to make decisions between a completely deranged social reactionary politics and just hewing to basic logical greed.
Normally they're able to kind of just spout this rhetoric without kind of having to make decisions or
they don't have to back it up with policy.
Yeah, or back it up in any way, but this does feel like a milestone or at least an escalation in some way.
The fact that he's Saruman to war with Disney is fascinating.
Well, and also the Democrats are just Republicans without that. So if you're a corporation, who do you go for? The insane, deranged, like let's hunt gay people for sport, or the one that doesn't do that when they're both equally greedy and willing to work with you?
Yeah,
you're basically just pushing them into the arms of like the Biden Democrats because they are just Republicans without that. So in one sense, I guess the Biden strategy of let's be Republicans without pointlessly
sounding like assholes,
shit on that, then yeah, I guess that is providing a meaningful alternative. Like almost every corporation that would have been wedded to a Republican ideology for greed reasons has no real reason to do that at this point because either party is going to get them what they want.
But this is what I don't think people like DeSantis fully appreciate. Disney runs Florida. Disney makes so much money in the state of Florida. That's where basically all their theme parks are. Are you going to get like all of Floridians to protest it? It's not going to happen. So like, it's funny when DeSantis thinks he's going to beat a corporation. Meanwhile, Republicans have spent their entire careers in the last 50 years or longer cozying up and letting corporations have more power than actual, politicians. So it's going to be interesting. Disney's not going to just sit there and take it and be like, well, our leader of diversity is going to be in charge of this conflict. No, they've got ghouls on their side too.
Yeah, and it's I mean, this continues to be such a great example of how things are just drummed up out of literally nothing, because Disney's values, even in their media, is so in line with the general conservative consensus and the status quo. Like obviously the extreme alt-right right-wingers are like way gone. You're not going to find a movie that like outright says Nazis should be in control in America.
No, you just have to watch the next Shapiro Carano joint, the inverse of a Spike Lee joint.
I mean, you could just watch like every cop show, but I guess it's not quite as extreme as what you're talking about.
Yeah, but there's even like new shows have fucked it up. So that insane show 911, which is like kind of a cop show, except instead of crime, it's just like the world is killing us. So it's like a volcano opened up in Manhattan. What do we do? Like it's just like disaster disambiguated from crime.
I was just gonna say it's not like still playing into it by like a volcano has erupted from the slew of homeless people dumping their
No, it's
trash.
the MS-13 didn't summon the volcano.
Okay.
Was it a gang style eruption? Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with your foundational premise, though, which I'm assuming you were getting to, which is that this is as close as you can get short of being totally deranged. Like that Disney media almost consistently promotes heteronormativity, traditional Western values, Christian
Yeah.
style values, all that shit. Which is, I think, is pretty unambiguously true. You're not going to see the next like trans princess in a Disney film. It's not going to happen. So
they also have it both ways, where they'll just like take shit out for China when they sell their shit there.
Sure.
They just make edits and cuts for whichever market is they're gonna best serve.
Yeah, I mean,
so when they're selling it to like Live New Yorkers, they add a gay character like getting blown, whatever. Nobody cares.
I mean, I think they're two probably well-known at this point examples, but just very briefly, one, like there's that new Harry Potter movie where that was so hyped up among certain circles because it's about like Dumbledore has been long revealed to be gay, and then now it's about his youthful days. So we have to explore that relationship, and it's like it was censored for gay content in China, and it was like one scene, like one 10-second scene they had to censor, like that. That's so revealing, I think, to really the depth that studios like Disney and Universal are willing to go to. It's representation is still just lip service to them, and then you have things like in the sense of having it both ways, like you just said, Jason. You have like Captain Marvel, where you have, of course, you have all these people railing against a woman superhero, a feminist movie,
And she's the
but
strongest character of all time.
she's the strongest character of all time, sure, but she's also just a walking advertisement for the Air Force. It's
Right.
like the most in your face, like, look at me climb into this cool plane, give like the hang loose symbol, and talk about how this was so formative and made me who I am to be an honorable superhero. It's like even when they do it, they are happy to double dip into the areas which are not considered socially conservative, but
Of
are
course.
still completely
But
feed into the same cycles.
This is why all of modern art feels soulless. It's because it's so modular. It's designed for particular demographics. It's not designed as a piece of art that then people of different shades of backgrounds come together to all mutually enjoy. No, this is designed as a product. These are designed as things that will sell, that they can change on the fly to make maximal money. So people are like shocked. Oh, yeah, yes, it's soulless. It's by definition soulless. It's like the most marketized thing ever made. Why are you shocked that Disney Corporation is engaging in this? Not, rhetorically.
The problem is also that when you have representation cynically abused to provide cover for like imperialism or capital, you diminish the belief that people have in the genuine or positive uses of representation. So like having LGBT characters in media is important so that those people feel like they're real humans when they see other people with their traits in film or in TV shows or other media. Like that's an important and good thing. But if it's like, okay, they only exist so that they can sell more drones or they can like export more violence or sell more Pepsis, like, well, then it just feels completely cynical and it undermines any feeling of value added or any feeling of like, oh, this is a good thing. It just provides more cover for people to do evil. And so then you stop believing when people are trying to actually do this for the right reasons. And it creates this kind of culture of cynicism where everyone's just like, oh, if you see a gay person in media or you see a woman in media, they're probably going to, as you say, pilot like a drone. And it's just like, okay, now I hate this.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's incredibly numbing and harmful in that way.
The only problem is I don't really buy the representation argument that leads to actual good outcomes. Gay people would be a lot happier if they had homes and like UBI and had rights and had healthcare than if there's like a gay character in the next Marvel movie.
Well, yeah, sure, but you can easily do both.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, what I'm saying is the impact of the Marvel one representation is nil. It's like nice to have as like a cherry on top of your dessert, but it's not of substance at all. It's just representation. It's not like tangible utility outcomes that are improving people's lives. It just feels nice.
I disagree, but maybe that's for a deep dive at some point.
I could always get into the separate but equal case and the psychological underpinnings of what it means to feel included in a social space, but that's more of a philosophical discussion.
Yeah, we don't have a shared social space in America. Our social space is totally blasted. It's fucking nuked from orbit.
Yeah, because all these millennials want their safe spaces, all their bubbles.
But regardless of its efficacy, I do think that the biggest damage is the assumption that any attempt to do representation is necessarily cynical or corporate or imperial, and that's a baffling correlation that we've only started to establish because of that appropriation by people who should never have been doing it in the first place.
And it's like a conflation of like existence with representation as well,
right?
Which is already tied now to corporate interests. Now it's like anytime that you try to talk about the troubles, the trials, or the existence of people who are not cishet is also a corporate ploy, even when it's not even in like a Marvel movie. It's just like trying to acknowledge that there are people in your community who exist in that way, which is
bring it back to Florida. There's a great movie called The Florida Project, which they totally democratized, like made on an iPhone movie without even professional actors. Who one's like a trans prostitute or something. It's one of the most representative films ever made, and it's not cynical. It's not made by a corporation. It's not made to sell copies to different parts of the world to maximize profit. Like, it's a piece of art that stands on its own and happens to represent an underrepresented population. That's actual representation. But to me, that's also what I was speaking about earlier. Like, that's actual art. That's an actual thing, piece of culture you can engage in. That's real. It's not a product.
Well, yeah, because when you do a big high investment capitalist endeavor, you want to make sure that you get return on investment, which means you want to make it as inoffensive and hitting as many markets as possible. So what we're really seeing here with like the Disney thing is company tries to maintain as large a market share as it can, which means it can't invest in any sort of explicitly homophobic attitudes because that would block off part of their market share. State responds with deranged lunacy fighting that because they don't give a fuck about gay people or market share. They just want to do evil.
Right.
So there's a fundamental tension here between maintaining a capitalist priority and maintaining an ideological requirement of doing evil. Exactly. So every now and then, capitalism fights for something good, not because they give a shit, but because it's profitable.
Right, exactly. Like, the capitalists on the right moral side here just because they want more money. Compared to DeSantis, who's like, I will forego money for evil.
Yeah, you have immoral versus amoral. Those are different things. Neither of them's good. But amoral only cares about profit. And right now, because the majority of Americans do not like the idea of homophobia being rampant, it is not profitable to alienate them by agreeing with homophobia. It's not, I mean, I'm not like proud of Disney for doing the obviously rational thing, but at least they're somehow doing better than DeSantis, which is actually really obvious because it's hard to do worse than DeSantis.
All right, we need to move on because this is a perfect segue.
Oh, this wasn't our deep dive?
Segue?
Became one.
I did that segue. Speaking of amoral, let's move on to the Supreme
Panic.
Supreme Court.
Okay.
From the Washington Post again. High Court rules Congress can exclude Puerto Ricans from aid program. Now, this is not something that often comes up in news that we talk about very often. I feel like in really general political discourse, but there does exist this island called Puerto Rico, which is technically an American territory. And
we stole it. Why can't we just claim it?
The question I have is, what aid program?
I mean, who knows? Any one of the various things Biden's tried to accomplish, or any of the pandemic relief stuff that trickled down to a fucking droplet at this point. Probably one of those things.
So it's just the court saying, yeah, don't worry, they don't count. It's fine.
They're not American. They're just owned by Americans.
Then what are they?
Fucked.
Oh my god! So this, I googled it, and just this NPR version of the headline says High Court. I don't know why they keep trying to use High Court instead of Supreme Court.
Because they were blazed.
It's weird. Yeah. It's very odd.
Yeah, because it's 421. High Court upholds excluding Puerto Ricans from aid for disabled and blind.
There you go.
That's so fucked. Holy shit, that is an Onion article.
It's just so fucked. It's like,
what the fuck?
And I had read separately from this, like, of course, it's not worth
There's no disabled or blind people there.
Yeah, that's
what are we, Chechnya? There's no gay people here. What are you talking about?
Like,
nudge, wink, wink.
Of course, Clarence Thomas, made a. This was like voted, I think, like 7-1 was the outcome on this one.
What is the possible argument against giving them aid?
What the actual fuck? Wait, which of the 3 liberal justices voted against this? What the fuck? Was one of those women like, "Hey, fuck Puerto Ricans"?
In Ketanji Brown Jackson's first, decision, fuck Puerto Rico.
I mean, it had to be Kagan, right? I don't see the other two. I don't think her either, but it doesn't make any sense.
That's funny.
Sorry. The justices. God, shows how well I'm into the things. The justices ruled 8-1 in favor of
8-1.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's actually interesting. What exactly was the ruling? Because there might be like some bullshit chicanery where it's like, well, this is not their role, or something was, I don't know, some legalese.
I mean, it's telling because it's this article from Reuters says 8-1 in favor of President Joe Biden's administration. So that could explain why Democratic nominees decided to side with one side of things. Since
the problem is we don't know really the sides of the case. All we've heard is like, some more porridge, please, and then no. Like, what exactly is the case?
Well, I've established that the one person who I thought would not fuck this did not fuck this, which is Sotomayor.
Yeah, it would be shocking if she sided against.
But that also means we just had like the biggest to do of all time about getting Ketanji Brown in the court. And one of the first things she does is like fuck Puerto Ricans, which is really fucking embarrassing.
So my joke was real.
Your joke was actually true.
Her landmark first decision on the court, fuck Puerto Rico. That's great.
And Clarence Thomas wrote like an opinion out of this of like, actually, this is a good point. The federal government shouldn't have to treat people equally based upon who they are or where they come from.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, let's actually take more money away from Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
Clarence Thomas's dissenting agreement.
Or take more money away from citizens in states, even.
Like, yeah,
I don't even have a state.
Puerto Rico has citizens. Puerto Rican citizens have some tax exemptions, but they still pay most federal taxes. So they are paying into funds that the Supreme Court is just being like willy-nilly.
They're also like occupied and run by corrupt.
That's not important.
I don't even give a shit if they pay taxes. Are they allowed to be their own country? No. So we have to take care of them. That's the obligation of being an empire. If you own a territory and you force those people to be part of your polity, then you have to take care of them as part of your polity. Otherwise, let them leave.
Let them eat
two
cake.
Choices. Give them statehood or let them leave. I don't understand what the
love
fuck
this, Alex. They don't want to leave.
Let them drink tea or eat piss or whatever. God, America's so fucked.
I don't even understand why we still control Puerto Rico. If we don't want them as a state, we should let them leave. Like, what the fuck do we even have them for then?
I don't know.
Let them vote to leave or integrate, and if they integrate, then let them vote in elections.
The mistake we've been making this whole time is every time they do one of those referendums is we give them two choices. Do something risky or keep things the same, right? Because we keep saying, like, do you want to become a state or do you want to remain as you are? That shouldn't be the vote. The vote should be, do you want to become a state or do you want to leave the United States completely?
Yeah,
it should only be one of those two, because what they're doing right now makes no sense.
But also, it's not even risky to become a state at all.
No, I know. It's just that people are averse to change. So make them choose between the two changes, both of which make more sense.
Yeah, but that's like saying I'm averse to eating my breakfast because it's changed from not eating my breakfast. Like, no, it would only be beneficial to become a state.
I agree. I'm not. We're not in a disagreement. I'm just talking about social psyche. So I would say to Puerto Ricans, fight harder to become a state or fight harder to leave, because what you're in right now is just asking to get abused.
Well, now we need Brexit. Puerto Rican exit.
I mean, to be honest with you, if I was in your position, I would just leave. But at the very least, do one of those things, because until you're a state, you're not really going to get treated like real people.
Brexit sounds like one of those, like,
sounds like a Plan B drug
or whatever.
Ask your doctor if Brexit is right for you.
Yeah, or my medicine. God, these are fucked, Aiden.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
I'm sure glad we have those three liberal court justices holding it down, even in these bad cases.
We're slowly reeling the Supreme Court back into the
I love that Ketanji Brown Jackson said fuck Puerto Rico. We should report our own fake news where it's like, quote, literally quote, Ketanji Brown Jackson, suck my dick, Puerto Rico.
Ketanji Brown Jackson builds cred with her conservative colleagues on the court by saying fuck Puerto Rico.
Yeah, she gets the joint, the Thug Life sunglasses and hat.
She's building up her reputation to get top tier gear later.
Organized crime between the Latin kings put a hit out on Ketanji Brown Jackson as
you don't get your
public is simmering.
You don't get your fucking +3 purple robes until you've made
grinding
10,
right now.
10 serious conservative case agreements.
He's rising and or grinding.
Fuck's sake. I'm sure, before we get flack from, nerds, I'm sure there is some detailed case where, but see, the law showed that the fiduciary responsibility of and see in the Title VII where it's, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, but I already covered that base. I already covered that base by saying the fact that it was 8-1 suggests something is off, but I don't care.
It doesn't matter. If the Supreme Court is so bound by legalistic gibberish that it can't say a group of people who are bound to the United States by legal obligation and us to them by legal obligation can't just take care of them with basic things needed to help the blind, then fuck off. Then you're useless as an institution.
Yeah.
But actually,
if you're a self-described textualist, you can suck my dick.
You can read my braille text, bitch.
Figure out whether sucking his dick is constitutional. Griswold v. Connecticut, 1959.
They burst into your house and they see you sucking dick.
Yeah. They've established that sucking his dick is legal in the privacy of your own home.
That's that Texas case, right? Where the cops burst in and saw sodomy and threw him in jail.
Yeah, I was referencing Griswold versus Connecticut, which is actually one of the foundational...
Is that the one with the sodomy one? I don't remember.
There's several, but there's several that established the right to have
fact that the American Supreme Court has several precedent-setting cases on sodomy is hilarious.
Well, it's funny because they basically established don't ask, don't tell, which is you can have gay sex as long as it's in the privacy of your own home.
I thought Griswold was the porn one, or is that the Texas one?
You're thinking of Grimace.
Grimace v. Texas?
When am I not thinking about Grimace?
The giant taste bud as I blew everyone's mind.
Yeah, I'm always shooketh by Grimace.
The valued member of the show.
All right, let's move on to the Independent stumbling upon obvious objective truth. Okay, just accidentally hit return. But people worry that moderate Democrats like Joe Biden are the same as Republicans. Our study suggests they may be right.
Wow.
The science is in.
They're saying it.
What we've all known forever is true.
Our math has demonstrated that Joe Biden has always been right wing. Holy shit.
We looked at the voting records of Warren and, Tom Cotton. Huh. Shocking, huh?
People worry that evil people are evil.
But what if they are? Yeah, I mean, it's unusual to see something like this said out loud, but it's also so obvious.
See, no, this is actually a great headline because they're called the Independent. So the average American's like, huh, even independents are saying it. And this is very easy to understand. This could be the one headline to rule them all to really change American politics. Just got to get the word out.
Joe Biden and right-wing Democrats' blatant existence heightens simmering fears that we may be in a one-party state.
Man, see, this is what I was really trying to get at with the Friedman thing about him shitting on China for being authoritarian. We are functionally a one-party state. It's not China bad, but America better. No, we're identical. We just have the pretense of democracy. But the last 5 elections don't go the way the vote went. So, we're not a democracy. We have a one-party state. What the fuck are we then, if not basically exactly what China is?
We're just all in consensus. We're a perfectly aligned, perfectly peaceful, placid population.
Perfectly flaccid population.
Got him. Not me.
It should be mentioned.
You sponsored by Hims or whatever the fuck.
While we are both investigating and mocking China, China technically has 9 political parties, right? And the only difference between them is that they have very marginal interpretations of communism differences, and they're all sanctioned by the state as legitimate. Therefore, so they have more political parties than we do. If we're just going to talk about I
don't know, we've got Green and Families Workers Party. We've got a bunch of those.
But basically,
Libertarian.
When you have state communism versus state capitalism, and then you only allow parties that are essentially within that range to function, you say, okay, all the major parties of any significance have to basically be in line with our economic orthodoxy. Yeah, it is the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Neither of us have meaningful choices, despite the supposed plethora of parties.
But that shouldn't be shocking. Like, yeah, the Democratic Socialist Party in America and like the Communist Party in America aren't going to win seats. They exist, but they're not actually allowed to participate in politics in a tangible way.
And in the case of China, it's just like, oh, okay, because like they'll have their kidney extracted. Whereas in here, it's because our political institutions are so poorly designed and so archaic that the only way for them to win power would be to actually displace one of the two major parties, which is basically impossible.
Right.
So we don't even have to be that draconian because we've essentially engineered it behind the scenes to be impossible.
Right. Because we're first past the post, we're not like a fuck. We call the what England has
parliamentarian.
Right, because we're not a parliamentary system. We don't even have to, like you say, take people's organs out. We have a first past the post. It means there's only ever going to be two hegemons, two amoeba conglomerates that oppose each other.
Neatly obfuscated in a different way.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Sorry, Maoists.
Thanks, Independent. Good story.
It's,
now we can prove it with science.
They've finally gotten to the truth.
Now, if only the British could also realize that about their own system.
No, they have a noble plurality.
People worry that 96-year-old Queen might be a part of an archaic system from another millennia.
But she's just so adorable. So cute.
Adorkable.
The way she stumbles around and...
Almost died of COVID.
Lives off tax.
Ancient predatory pedophile capitalists might not be good for the state of England.
And not as ancient, predatory, like mass philanderer, liar, scumbag, cheater, crime lord, known as their current PM, might also not be that great.
At least he's funny.
He's less funny over the last couple of years. He was funny when he wasn't in charge.
Yeah.
But then when he's like, let's let all the old people die from COVID.
Well, now he's just like full Bolsonaro.
He became much less funny.
Like his humor is sick rather than distant.
Yeah, but he's not as individually suffering as Bolsonaro.
Do you see the photo of him meeting with Zelensky recently?
No, but I heard he got a lot of flack for that, even though it didn't really make sense.
Well, now you have to post it.
I don't have it ready, but it was just a photo op. Apparently, I guess he went to wherever he and Zelensky met. It was just very funny seeing the contrast between like an extremely tired, minimally dressed Zelensky and Boris as
Boris like chip
as he always looks. Yeah, and I was trying to imagine
like, lip and all that.
What he came there to say and do.
I mean, I think he's selling weapons.
He goes there in his carnival outfit, just like trying to show him up.
You live like this, bro?
Man, Trudeau's got to meet with Zelensky in blackface. I'd pay to see that. And then it becomes a celebrity boxing match because they're both kind of like chauvinists who say they're strong. That'd be great.
Don't worry, at the rate we're going, we may end up having Le Pen in blackface meeting with Zelensky in a few weeks.
Yeah, but not Marie Le Pen. I said...
yeah, I was just talking about another French asshole.
I guess he's French-Canadian, whatever. I don't know. I mean, I haven't checked in on it, but I think Macron's going to win.
He's estimated to win, but the margin is so small that no one's really sure.
Yeah, but the socialist who came in third that no one ever mentions is going to say like,
who got almost a quarter of the national vote, as if that's irrelevant.
He had 1% less than Le Pen.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like it's a two horse race.
It's at least that is technically the way it works there. But yeah.
All right. I think we'll make this a neat episode, but I'll do one 90? More. I'll do one more article before we go out. This one, not really much to talk about, in my opinion, but maybe it'll spark some ire from you guys. It's just keeping power accountable. NBC. Biden administration to resume leasing for oil and gas drilling on federal lands. Subheading: the move comes as President Joe Biden seeks new ways to help lower gas prices. So
yeah, he wasn't going to do this before Putin.
Yeah, exactly. Just neat cover for a convenient reason.
Yeah, he hates to do it, but we've got
to break a explicit campaign promise to not do this. Like, not even wishy-washy in any way. He literally said this on the campaign trail.
I hope we can find the clips of him promising to not start new drilling.
I'm sure
put it in the show.
One Google search to do so.
Joe Biden sends thank you letter to Putin for providing cover for a right-wing administration.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thought process. He was probably like, Hell yes, a major gas producer. Fuck yeah.
There's an Ogloff comic where a king is about to be beheaded by an invading like warlord, and he's just got a huge grin. The guy's like, "Why are you grinning?" And he's like, "I was the worst king. Now all that will be remembered is that I was destroyed by an evil tyrant invader. I'm totally off the hook." It's like, yeah, that's how it feels.
All right, like I said, no real need to commentate on this any further. It just is what it is. Continues to disappoint and be transparently corrupt and disingenuous. So that's fun. That's fun that things keep heading as they always have. Speaking,
this is what everyone meant by back to normal with Biden.
Yeah, at least he doesn't say like overtly racist things all the time.
He just sniffs people weird.
That's different. He just keeps, legislating and executively ordering things that are terrible for America.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure he'll keep his other promises, like not having any more student debt, passing a massive infrastructure bill with like, $10 trillion or whatever it is, or, ending police brutality. I'm sure all of those are going to happen in short order.
Alex, do you really mean it? Is President
Please, sir,
going to help us?
He's going to build back better.
This is like if Whoville elected the Grinch. I'm like, please, he's going to make everything better, right?
Yeah, his fucking colon grew 3 sizes that day. From a tumor.
Oh, right, that dumb fucking Ethelfled.
It's not a tumor.
Sorry, we're mad. We're watching The Last Kingdoms last season. We're all salty.
Yeah, it sucks.
Oh no, really?
That's why
the main actor is still the main actor and his crew are still awesome, but like the plot has been really stupid for several seasons now.
Damn.
Netflix stocks drop as Uhtred shits the bed.
Like I'm still gonna watch it just because I love the core cast,
right?
But like it's not well written.
Okay, the last one kind of lost me the last season, but I was hoping this one would bring it back.
This is all the news that's fit to print.
Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about it because that's kind of recent. I don't want to spoil people.
Yeah. Spoiler: show sucks.
No, I'm saying I don't want to talk about details of the show.
Oh yeah. Maybe I said too much.
We've said too much.
I have the reaction of the uncle.
Yeah.
With like the flirting.
Yeah.
Can we? What is the claim of the? All right, wait. Keep going in.
All right, welcome to installment number 2 of Aiden gets the Atlantic newsletter in his inbox.
Oh no, I forgot.
Welcome to installment 2 of Aiden is somehow as bad as the Atlantic in his title generation.
Oh right, because we have to guess, right?
Oh
shit!
All right, so same thing. Three guesses. Each section is going to be 4 headlines. One of them is false.
Wait, 3 guesses?
Well, three
rounds.
3 rounds. Okay, yeah, I got you. I thought it was going to be like super easy.
Yeah, 4 guesses. There are 4 headlines. So the first round. Number 1, welcome to the Trump cinematic universe.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds Atlantic-y to me.
When can we feel normal again? The end of airplane masking feels momentous. How social change actually works.
I feel like I've seen the second one. My vote is the airplane one is fake.
These are all really good. I'm saying social change.
Actually, I'm going to change my vote to the Trump one.
It's just not complicated enough, I don't think.
All right. We locking in? Final guess?
Yeah, Trump cinematic universe is too good. It's Aiden.
Yeah, I'll say social change.
The false one is, when can we feel normal again?
What? I swear to God I read that. I swear to God I read that.
Probably have. It probably is one out there.
But it didn't stop you.
The problem is that, like I also felt like I'd read 7 called that. So like you just captured the ethos of ones we've definitely read without the exact heading.
Yeah.
I still think you're lying. I think I've read that one.
No, I think that was well done.
Enter the nirvana state of
okay, who the fuck wrote how social change actually works? That's the most pretentious shit I've ever heard.
Right? I thought that would be the biggest one because it's so blatantly true.
No, I want to read that one because that person's basically saying like I have the secret.
Actually, social change works by voting. I mean, I don't know what else they're gonna fucking say.
Electoralism? That's
social change happens when you give a billionaire a Pepsi to give to a cop.
Social change through subsidies. All right.
Oh Christ.
Round 2.
I want to read the Trump Cinematic Universe one now too.
All right, I'll
Send me these when we're
I'll
done.
forward those to you then. Yeah.
Is this the one that got retitled "How to Make Change Slowly"?
I'm gonna scalp off your subscription to their weekly newsletter.
All right.
Netflix ended their password sharing, so I gotta get some juice somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you torrent anything anyways. Elon Musk, baloney king.
What? What?
After Babel, the true cost of 1 million lost to COVID. The silent war on women.
Ooh, this is a tough round.
Could you actually come up with something as stupid as Elon Musk baloney king?
If I'm in my bag, maybe, but it's
That like would you have spelled it with the EY?
No, I wouldn't have.
Well,
yeah.
Either way, we have to read that one at some point.
You know, I'm a Bologna boy.
I think the silent war on women. Nah, the true cost of 1 million COVID deaths.
That's so heinous.
Faden did it. He's just darkness.
I think the women one. That's there's a certain cadence and pithiness that you seem to be going for. That's my guess.
The true one is the silent war on women.
Dang.
Yeah,
that was my instinct, but I changed.
Yeah, you guessed that first, but yeah, the rest.
And it's more fun if Alex and I vote for different ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't believe that Elon Musk baloney king was a real thing that appeared in my.
Is this like a Judge Judy reference? Because he's like trolling Twitter right now, and she's like shouting baloney at him. And what's happening?
That would be rubbish. It's a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, they're not wrong. Like in the meaning of baloney, as in being full of shit and wrong. Yes, but it's just like whose grandpa wrote that?
Why did baloney get such a bad rap?
I guess it's just
like spam king. Like what?
Yeah.
It's like low quality meat. What's the message?
It's less explicitly phallic than saying like sausage king.
Why didn't Big Baloney stand up and defend the slander?
But it connotes the same idea as sausage, which is like low class and gross meat.
What are you talking about? Sausage is great.
Well, sausage is basically just made from the stuff you couldn't use anywhere else because it's gross. So like,
but what about all the like the specialty sausages that are like their own thing that are good?
Entire cultures have developed around peasant food to make it more interesting. I'm just saying, like the historical associations with
sausage origins. We need like a Wolverine origins version. Okay.
Like there's plenty of bologna these days that tastes quite good. It's just the question of the origin and the association.
All right, cool. We get a final batch.
One last batch.
Baloney King. It's my new title.
Earl
of Baloney.
The key to the Kremlin. This is the war's decisive moment.
Wait. The key to the Kremlin is the entirety of the headline?
Mm-hmm.
Not like the key is this. We have the key. It's just the key to the Kremlin. Stop.
If you're hoping for answers in these headlines, you're in for a bad time.
Well, that one can't be you because it's too dumb. Although I might have just insulted you if it turns out to be that one.
This is the war's decisive moment. The lesson of Russia's war crimes. And the case for eating dinner in front of the TV.
As argued before the High Court.
Your Honor, I'm a simple country bumpkin. I eat my dinner in front of the TV.
So we have 3 about the Ukraine-Russia situation, and the longest one about eating dinner in front of the TV and why that's the.
I also feel like I've seen the dinner by the TV one, but I'm gonna go against that. I think you're tricking us with three real ones about Russia, and the TV dinner one you made.
I'm torn between several of these Russian ones. I feel like one of them has to be the fake one. The TV one's so good. I just have to make it has to be real, right? Like I want it to be real.
Yeah, in Aiden's world. Because Aiden's funny.
Thank you.
Using that degree for something.
I'm gonna say this is the war's decisive moment is the Aiden one.
Oh no, I think that one's real. Oh god.
Jason should have gone with his instinct once again. It's the key to the Kremlin.
No!
Fuck, that was my second choice. Fuck.
I did
the dumbest shit on the board is Aiden.
Wow, you beat our ass this round. We beat
our ass last round too.
No, I thought we guessed one of them right.
We each got one of the last ones. This time we got collectively one of them.
Similar result the last time.
We did worse than random guessing.
Yeah, because he's trying to trick us, so it wouldn't be just.
I've been permanently Atlantic brained, unfortunately. So
holy shit!
Oh Christ!
So you did come up with the key to the Kremlin.
How social change actually works was a real article.
That's a real one. Yep.
The case for eating TV dinner in front of the TV is a real one.
Yeah, but that makes me happy.
But I can't think of anything less meaningful. I tried. I can't do it. Like the case for shitting without the double seat down. Like I don't know. Getting a deep lean in there. Like what? I mean,
they're just writing to grandpas, right? Because like, who's eating in front of the TV like it's 1950? It's the kind of unless they're talking about like Screen. I don't know. This is such an archaic reference. It's like microwave your frozen dinner and get out the tray
and watch like a Thomas Friedman. Like, what is a TV? What is the essence of a TV? We all eat in front of our computers. That's the same thing.
What are the 3 things you'd like to say to your TV when you get to heaven? I mean,
he's having a historical talk between a CRT TV, an LED.
What are some of the lessons that Putin has given us about HD TV? What? I mean, these don't mean anything.
What a great batch.
And one of the ones that I skipped was just a newsletter that was thanking subscribers because they won like some prestigious national award for being the best news magazine in the world.
Holy shit! Really?
Why?
That's a lovely contrast between this finishing outro and how the world views them.
Truly nothing but the best.
Award-winning journalism. I'm gonna go throw up now. I'm gonna go purge in front of my TV.
The true purge.
We're now after Babel.
What does that mean? That one just went in one ear out the other.
The only reason I knew that one was real because I read another one that was all about Babel, and it's the same publication.
What's Babel?
The Tower of Babel. It's a stupid biblical story.
Why wouldn't they say after the Tower of Babel?
Because fuck you, like, because they're trying to be stupid about it. Trying to be like, everyone who reads this is Christian or recently post-Christian and knows exactly what we're talking about.
But I thought it could be like Babel Fish. I thought it was like, one of your old Spanish videos.
Tower of Babel stocks dropped 35% as subscribers.
Right, I thought it might have been like a Wordle thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that it can't ape on New York Times. Who knows?
Jesus, these are so horrible.
Fuck this shit. I'm out.
All right, with that feedback, definitely bringing it back in a few.
No, it's good. It's good.
This is our best segment.
It's fun. We have fun. All right. On that note, subscribe to The Atlantic. It results in great fun like this if you have other friends who
don't subscribe to our podcast.
Love deriding well-established publications. And that's all I have for this week, boys. So catch you next time.
You should be able to find us on YouTube, almost all podcast platforms now, finally, and our website.
Yeah.
So go find us. And
as of several weeks ago, most likely by the time this gets released, we are everywhere.
3 years ago.
We're all over the place now. We're going prestige worldwide.
No longer YouTube and Patreon only, so hit subscribe wherever you want to find us.
More of us in your feed bag.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.